Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. We have a full hour of insightful discussion planned for your enjoyment tonight. With its explosive popularity, the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy caught the attention, curiosity, and awe of millions of women, and even some men. Let's see. These hot little books jumped right to the top of the book lists everywhere, hitting 2 million sales, and easily surpassing the sales of the Harry Potter series, Twilight, yes, thank you. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, and The Help. But then again, sex does sell, right? So obviously, though, you know, we're actually here to listen to these lovely ladies. Our wonderful panel this evening is headed by Gwen Petrarch, who's sitting right next to me, Patty Blunt, who's in the middle, and Tori Morton. Wary, sorry, I tried, guys. These ladies are the members of the Romance Writers of America, Long Island chapter 106, correct? 160. Man, I'm getting all things wrong. Okay, they're going to be discussing E.L. James's series, which we've all read. They're going to discuss the origins, the genre, and some read-alikes, which we have a couple over here, but they're going to be mentioning possibly some of their favorites. And also talk about what they've written, because they have written in this genre. Without further waiting, our panelists. Also, I just wanted to make up one more thing. They have a book up here. If you haven't signed it already with your names and your email addresses, they greatly appreciate it. Also, after the hour, there is a 50 Shades ice cream cake that we're going to be cutting. One of my friends actually made it for us, so we're going to cut that actually after, so that you can just, you know, digest my treats that I just did. So, without further ado, our panel. Oh, sure.
Yeah, now we can see you guys.
Hello. Here we are. Oh, it does work.
Okay. I'm not used to using this.
You might not even need it if you feel like.
Yeah, okay. If somebody can't hear me, just let me know. I'm Gwen. And as Jocelyn introduced Patty and Tuweri, I'll give you a little rundown of what we write in. And just wanted to let everybody know we can do about 45 minutes of our panel discussion, then we're going to open to a Q&A. Myself. So if you guys have questions, you want to write them down, maybe hold them until afterwards so we can, you know, I'm going to have to kind of watch the time so everybody can get their oar in if they want. And this may seem a little obvious, but we may be using words that, you know, the 7 you can't say on television. So if you have any problem with BDSM or sex or those words, go down to the beach bakery cafe for a few minutes until we're done, because you might hear them. Tuweri Morton writes in the young adult paranormal genre. Her, excuse me, I'm a little nervous. Her book Icon is the first in her Elite series, has a publishing date to be announced. Patty Blount, we're very proud of her. She is the author of the book Send, which is going to debut in when?
Day after tomorrow.
Day after tomorrow. Right. So we're all excited about it. She writes in the young adult genre also. And I write in the erotic romance, erotica, and funotica genres. And my 2 romances, erotic romances, Money Business and I Am Alpha, also have a future date to be released. So, to be announced, rather. So I guess we'll start with the questions. And again, if you can't hear me, just let me know. Or if you can't hear us. Okay, first question for Patty, and then I guess Tuweri if you want to chime in. what's the difference between romance and erotica as fiction genres? What elements are common to both and what elements unique? And how does 50 Shades fit in, do you think?
Okay, well, primarily, romance is about an emotional relationship. Depending on the author that you're reading, some romances will show love scenes on camera, so to speak. Nora Roberts tends to get pretty graphic in her books. And then, you know, some of the old-fashioned, like maybe Barbara Cartland's, the only thing they ever did was kiss. Yeah,
You can't hear?
Okay. So I was saying.
Did you hear the question?
Yes.
You did, okay. So I was saying that the primary difference for me between romance.
It is on.
It's on. The difference for me between romance and erotica is that romance will focus on an emotional relationship between the male, the hero and the heroine. So it's usually a heartfelt, deep love, right? Whereas I think the other genre, what did we say? We're calling it erotica in here. Okay, so erotica is really mostly about the sexual relationship between the two characters. In some cases, and some authors one can't exist without the other. That the erotic romance develops out of the traditional romance. And others, there might not be much of a romance at all. It might just simply be a business transaction, which is how I think 50 Shades of Grey actually started, right? It was a contractual relationship. But primarily between the two, it's really one is about the heart and one is about the body, right? So 50 Shades, I think one of the reasons it's such a compelling story for most of us is that it combined both. It started out as a traditional erotic romance where it was all just about body, 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 but it quickly became heartfelt as well.
Can you answer the question, what is the difference between erotica and porn?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's easy. Erotica has plot, has characters, a storyline, and porn is just really straight up sex. So titillation, right? So it's not mommy porn. 50 Shades of Grey is not mommy porn because it has the story and the plot.
And I have to ask in the show of hands, who hates that phrase, mommy porn?
Oh yeah, the media has been brutal with describing it as money.
It's a derogatory phrase
Right.
to lump books like 50 Shades and Bear to You and some of the, do we have a brochure? Is this our brochure?
Yeah, I think that's.
Jocelyn, this is our brochure?
No, I think this was what they.
This is
discussed.
the Wikipedia?
This was the last one.
Okay.
Critics of the series have been sort of labeling it mommy porn.
Right,
as
for
a
any
way
of these books, or these
denouncing
type of books that we.
Let me ask you this, you all have read the story?
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody not like it? Couple of you did, okay. Those of you who did like it, I say don't let anybody tell you that you shouldn't like it. If you like it, then you like it. Don't allow phrases like mommy porn or any of the others that people are using to make you feel otherwise, make you feel ashamed of that. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
Maybe I'm missing something. I don't really, what is the definition of mommy porn?
Well, as we were just saying earlier, a lot of the critics of this series have been labeling it mommy porn as a way of saying that it's not worth your money. You shouldn't read it. You shouldn't buy it. And it's been pretty much how the media has been portraying the stories as mommy porn. I find the term extremely derogatory and insulting. I like the books very much. To me, you know, I think porn as a genre is all about sex, empty sex. I think these books went much deeper than that. There's a lot more heart in them than like your traditional porn movie, so to speak. So I say don't let anybody tell you otherwise if you liked it.
That's good advice, actually. Did anybody, I heard something.
Yeah, I've only read the first one, and I thought, I was at a luncheon last week, actually, and we were all talking about it at the table. And I was gonna say, heck, that's enough, I got the flavor, but I understand that the second and third books are written better, the plot is, yeah, so, okay, so I guess I gotta read. Number 2 and 3.
We're not gonna be spoiling any endings here, so, don't worry about that, because there are a few people in the audience who haven't read them all. Okay, the next question. I'm taking this from Anne Brown and Walker's article, Why Smart Women Read Romance Novels. And Walker states, our society feels threatened by women having sex, which is maybe why the media has latched on to phrases like mommy porn. Walker states in this article that romance novels present the opposite view. Heroines are sexually satisfied during each encounter. There's a safe space to explore their fantasies and figure out what turns them on. So the BDS, a lot of people have a bad, they just think badly of BDSM because they don't know what it's about. But taking that component out of the story, Duary, do you think Christian and Anna share a healthy view on sex?
I mean, I didn't have a problem with their view of sex, but a healthy view, it all depends on what your definition of healthy is. It was healthy for them, it worked for them. So, it's specific, I guess, to each group.
That's a hard question to answer because healthy is very subjective. I have kids, and I can tell you unequivocally that if I had a daughter in a relationship like that, I'd worry. But as fictional characters, yeah, I'd say that it worked for the both of them. So I don't know that it was necessarily something that they should be ashamed of. And actually, that question just reminded me of another point that's important to make here is that satisfaction, especially the female satisfaction, is an important point that's made over and over again in these books. In fact, in the genre as a whole, it seems to be an important point, and that's a really huge departure from porn. Porn doesn't care much about the female point of view, so that kind of reminded me of that point. But I don't know, healthy is subjective. That one's a tough one to answer.
Well, going beyond that, in another blogger article from a gal named Lollipop Goldstein. I think I picked it just for her first name.
I love it.
But she in this blog, she talks about how she can believe that Anna is a 21-year-old virgin who's never masturbated. She can believe that. What she cannot believe is the frequency, intensity, and physical acrobatics we're talking about. Physical acrobatics of the multitude of orgasms scattered across the pages of this book. She didn't find that believable. And she had something going on with the standing up and having an orgasm when you're standing up. Did you find those believable?
No.
No. No.
I didn't, and for me, because I write erotic romance, when she ended some of the sex scenes with "and he found his release," I just, I wanted to throw my Kindle across the room. So I don't know if it was very titillating, up until he found his release, but how many people found that unbelievable? Or found those unbelievable, because there were so many. Too many, yeah. Well, that's true. That's true.
What I said. Right. It's fun, it's fiction, why not? It's a fantasy, so.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to keep that in the back of your mind.
It may need time to recover. I don't think he had much time to recover.
I also found it unbelievable that a 20-year-old young lady who never had sex at all would go into the Red Room of Pain and actually embrace it. She actually was enjoying herself in there. I mean,
I think she was curious a lot of times with a lot of the toys he had in there.
Well, yeah,
her
a lot of the
naivete.
stuff she had no idea what they
Right.
were. She had no idea. So.
But she was so besotted that she figured, I'll see how far this can go, and he encouraged that.
Went further than she thought.
Yes, yes.
I'm pretty sure I would have run for the door.
yes.
The handcuffs might have Caused me to do that too. The next question, this is for Patty. Does it impact readers' choices to read a book knowing it originated from fan fiction? Everybody knows what fan fiction is? No. Okay. I'll let you take
I'll
that.
start with this one. I actually am a big fan of fan fiction. So fan fiction is usually free, sometimes novel-length material, other times they're short stories that people post online in sort of an homage to their favorite movies or books. I'm a huge X-Files fan, so there's a whole website devoted to X-Files fan fiction. And some of those stories are actually better than what we would see on TV. So after the popularity exploded upon Twilight's release and as well as the movie, there are several websites devoted just to Twilight fan fiction. And people get very creative with them. Sometimes they take them out of the paranormal, so the characters are not vampires or werewolves and whatever else they are, they're just human. Well, that's how this story started. Okay, actually the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy began as a fan fiction called Master of the Universe. And I read it in its original form, and I loved it then. All right, so Edward the vampire was Christian Grey, and Bella, of course, was Anastasia Steele. And so the story gained extreme popularity on this particular website, and I think it must have been a good 90 chapters, maybe 100. It went on for a couple of years, and I think enough people must have provided feedback to E.L. James, who posted at the time under the name of Snow Queen's Ice Dragon. Everyone had suggested to her that, being that you've taken the paranormal elements out of the story, have you considered changing their names and maybe changing the plot a little bit and publishing it? And she did. Okay. So, and that's how I kind of personally feel that's why the book has enjoyed this rise to bestsellerdom, is because it kind of piggybacked the Twilight success.
Right.
So for me, it's sort of this really ethical gray area. I have a book coming out on Wednesday, and I could very easily make my lead character Edward and his girlfriend Bella and throw it up on the same site and capitalize off of all that fan fiction, enjoyment as well. But I just don't feel it's right. So I do have a problem with this. I don't feel that this was truly an ethical story in that sense, that it maybe shouldn't be making the amount of money it is. But if Stephanie Meyer doesn't have a problem with it, I guess I don't either.
No, she gave her blessing.
She did. She did give her blessing.
Tueri, the question I have for you, has this fan fiction phenomenon piqued interest in seeking out more books about erotica, you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
I don't know if you're familiar with Bare to You, but
It's
that's
up
like
there,
number
right?
5 on the bestseller list right now. I believe it's all 3 of the 50 Shades books are 1, 2, and 3, and then the trilogy is number 4, and then Bare to You is number 5.
that
So of course I
Sylvia
had to
Day?
check it out. Yeah, by Sylvia Day. So yeah, I don't think she would be number 5 if 50 Shades didn't have the success that it had. Absolutely.
Yeah. Here, or she might jump in there first.
Right, and then when you kind of look at the cover of Bare to You, it sort of looks 50-ish, 50 of Shades, 50 Shades of Grey.
Cufflinks.
It's gray, it's got the cufflinks, you kind of like, and it's erotica, so, and it actually is pretty good. How many people read that story in here?
That lady
I
over
read
there.
my book, so she's enjoying it.
It's very good. Very, very similar, but very good. Very good. Okay, here's a question now I know everyone's going to be piqued about. How do you explain the viral popularity of books that nearly everyone who's read them seems to say they're poorly written? How many people have you heard that from? Right? Does your explanation change when you learn that Goodreads, which is, I guess it's a blog site, that reviews books? Yeah.
It's more like a social network of people who like books.
Except
So it's
this,
kind of like
except
Facebook
this
for
one.
readers.
Goodreads says the highest ratings for people liking 50 Shades, and there's jaded New Yorkers, we're all gonna go, Mississippi, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. I may not touch this question.
I got that.
So how do you explain that? Why do you think that is, and why not?
You know, when I read that statistic originally, I was I was really shocked by it, and then I thought about it a little bit more, and I realized that the 50 Shades trilogy has, I mean, it's the year 2012, right? It's 2012. I know we don't have moving sidewalks and hovercraft yet, but can't we at least talk about sex? And finally, we can. I mean, it's astounding how embarrassing. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, Michigan kicked somebody out of the legislation floor for using the word vagina. I mean, are we living in the dark ages? So apparently, I think there's still a tremendous amount of just, oh my God, we don't talk about this in public, and we're not allowed to, and it's wrong, and shame, 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 and you know, you read mommy porn. So we need to stop that. So I'm really thrilled that this book and all of the others that are on the bestseller list right now are giving us the opportunity to finally have intelligent discussions about sex, because there's nothing wrong with it.
Many, many, many years ago, there was a book called The Story of O.
Yeah.
Right, and when I read the first of these books, I said, this is a throwback to that.
Well, that was probably the grandma or the granddaddy.
Yeah.
But what they did was they considered that was really a play on what the Catholic Church had the mistress and, you know, the story of it. But that it was really a play on the Catholic Church and all of the people that followed Catholicism. But that was one of the original, I don't know whether you call it mommy porn, but everybody was reading it.
Right, right. But now back then there was still a stigma attached to that. Like you would probably hide it in your newspaper or your issue of Good Housekeeping, because heaven forbid anybody should catch you reading that title. Whereas today, now we have our Kindles. Yeah, right. We can all read these titles, but nobody's looking over our shoulder and going, oh my God, what am I reading?
You said that it's 2012 and shouldn't we be able to talk about sex, and yet the entire state of Florida has banned the book in all of their libraries. And there's so many cities, other than Florida, have done the same.
Which is only contributing to its popularity.
Yeah, of course, because you can go into those libraries.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I think getting banned, Patty was saying, we had a discussion, Patty was saying that she hoped, because her book Send is a YA about cyberbullying. And I won't get into the story because Patty could do that better than I could, but we were hoping it got banned in certain places.
It would be an instant
just,
bestseller.
yeah, if somebody banned it, but you know, I think those barriers are breaking down.
Well, that's what I'm hoping.
Because when there isn't a stigma like that to something, especially sex, it's no longer dirty and it's not treated that way. You know, and that can only be good for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Because
that's exactly why I said earlier that I think that if people are using terms like mommy porn or anything like that, and doing anything they can to make you feel ashamed that you like this book, hold up your hand and go, You like it, you have a right to like it.
Drop a few fingers. This question is for Patty, because this was something that she feels very strongly about. Does everybody know who Dr. Drew is?
Yes.
How do you address criticisms that the books are mommy porn, or as Dr. Drew suggests, rape fantasy?
I really hate that comment.
Rape fantasy.
Rape fantasy.
Dr. Drew is a TV psychologist. I don't know if his credentials are truly, worth much more than that, to be honest with you. But I think he is a real doctor, I'll give him that much. But he has publicly condemned these books for rape fantasy, and I take such offense to that term because, rape, first of all, we've already established the differences between the genre, right? This is all about female satisfaction, right? That where porn never goes into that. Porn is all about the guy, right? So these books are all about, Christian devotes hours upon hours and so much energy to making sure she, orgasms at 21,
21 times
in
one night.
So, it's all about her pleasure, right? I don't know many rapists who bother to worry about a woman's pleasure. The thought that women really want to be raped is the most insulting and demeaning thing I can imagine ever saying to somebody. And ultimately, that's why I'm so furious with that comment. This one is even worse than the mommy porn comment for me, because it's all about control, right? 50 Shades and even the BDSM movement, that's not about control, that's about trust. Trust is not present in a rape, in a crime of rape, and I think that's probably why it's a crime. I mean, to me, it's just the most asinine comment that you can
I mean, I think, not have a phrase, but I think we're not admitting to certain things. She's signing a contract.
She didn't. She never
She
did.
did.
That's what the whole thing
But
is
she never
about.
did.
The whole thing is about submission.
It's about
Not her
trust.
consent.
It's about trust, though, ultimately, at its
Yeah,
core,
but,
right? Now,
In fact, like, he wouldn't go any further unless he could trust her to let him know when to stop.
Exactly, when it was
Right.
too much, she crossed off.
and that's why they have safe words.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, there are safe words in there, right, in their
she
relationship.
did sign the contract.
No,
that was a
not in the first one,
Very
anyway.
first-
Thing in the contract she signed.
Yes.
That was a non-disclosure agreement, not a
Exactly.
She said, I trust you, I don't
I
even have to
trust you, I'm
read
gonna
it.
sign the contract.
I don't
She
exactly
swears
read it.
never to tell anybody what's going on.
Right.
I mean, there are things about it that are, you know, we're sugarcoated into this romantic
They raise your eyebrows, certainly. I mean, they make you
no, it's
question.
not all just, oh, it's this love story and he's pleasing her and having nice sex. You know, it's a little bit odder than that, I
No,
would
it is
say.
odd, I won't
It's a little
dispute
bit
that.
sicker than that.
It definitely has a
It's not
darker
just
element
the
to it, but I
sugarcoat
certainly
romantic
wouldn't
with
call it
he's
rape.
pleasing her and she's having orgasms over the, you know, that's a little bit sugarcoating what it's about.
It seems to me that anyone who says things like that have only read the first book. And then once you
Well,
go to
this
the
is
second
what I'm
book,
talking about, the
it's
first
so much
book.
better.
Did you read the others?
And that really
That
is
doesn't-
really what it's all about.
It does
No,
matter.
no,
It
no.
does
This is
matter.
what's
Developing
going
of a
on in
relationship.
Can I tell you?
It
Not
does
that-
matter.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because we had a discussion among the Long Island romance writers, and I was surprised that a lot of the writers did not really care for the series. And a lot of them who didn't care only read the first book, or they didn't read any of it and they just heard. So it's like, you know, if you're gonna make a decision or an opinion,
Yeah,
make it
but-
informed, you know.
Yeah,
But
but
it's
it
always
shouldn't-
that, that's who bans books.
That's what this book club was about. First of all, was the first book. You can't, if it's gonna be a whole book, then write it together.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you read the entire series.
No,
Okay, okay.
I was in the book club, and in the first book, I tossed back and forth between whether I liked Christian or not. I hated
Right.
him, I liked
Yeah.
him, I hated him, I
Yeah.
liked him. And I did go on to read the second and third book, because I didn't want to wait, you know, so, but by the end of the series, I really liked Christian.
And so you followed Anastasia's own path. That was what she was wrestling with throughout the story.
Right. So I, you know, I
just
found
say-
it.
But
yeah, I
then
found the
why
second
not
and
write
third
it
book.
as one whole book? I mean, this book stands by itself. You can't justify a first book based on what the second and third book said, then write it as one book.
Well,
I mean, is this just promotion?
To be honest, I think she actually was writing her own book. It was written as fan fiction at one point.
And can I just say, from a strict occult standpoint, you make more money from 3 books?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
They
It seems
do
a
from
matter
one.
of dollars and cents.
And it would have been a long book, you know,
Well,
yeah.
he could have cut out one.
And I think she needed time in between to get better as a writer.
That's what everybody said.
Yeah, because the writing was, but it was her first effort, so,
Right.
but. What was that about second book? Somebody said something about second book?
No, she just said it.
She just, and she made a fortune.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, that's, you know.
And she made a
Clubs,
fortune.
she had clubs and everything.
And coming from somebody that has read the whole series, the second book is the best one of the 3.
Exactly, yeah.
It's Hearts and Flowers.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that she's now writing another book from the men's point of view.
Oh.
Well, at the end
Yeah, I'm not sure
of,
about
Like
that.
the
at
last
the end
chapter.
of the third.
Right, and since she's
She
so
gives you a
long,
snippet of it at the end of the
right,
third
and
book.
then she
She
did.
did? Oh, really?
Which I think, you know what, I think that would be more popular because Christian was so messed up. and he sort of came,
One
his power came around to Mama's way of thinking, you know, he kind of, right, they almost switched,
They switched roles almost.
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
So
so
that was
that
in
will
the last
probably
one,
be, if she
freedom,
does it,
freedom
it'll
at
probably
last.
be more popular than the first one, and, you know, good luck. But, Katrina Lumsden, writes for this, Goodreads, everybody? And Lumsden did not like this. She called, this kind of book ignorant trash, sets feminism back decades. She claims that women who defend this book are given the impression that women enjoy being debased, abused, and controlled outside the consensual dom-sub relationship. I don't know if I agree with that, but she claims that this book is not about BDSM, but about a sick, abusive man and his obsession with a young, naive invertebrate.
Wow.
Yeah, she was very kind. It is about individuals with emotional maturity of toilet paper, and gives young women reading this trite, this trite, insulting, and dangerous impression that this is how relationships are supposed to be. She concludes with the statement that it does good men a disservice. I don't know, I see a gentleman here, I see a couple of gentlemen. I don't know, have you guys read the books?
Yeah, I tried to read it.
You
I
tried?
found it really boring.
Honestly, that I've talked to a lot of guys who've read the book, and that is a typical answer for a man.
Yes.
It really is. Sorry.
I haven't read the book, but somebody, I can't tell you, maybe 3 or 4 women have come up to the desk or up at the reference desk and said, "You should be married? You should read this book."
Can I,
Make it happen.
can I say, my husband never reads, okay, he's not a reader, but he read the trilogy, loved it. He even read Bear to You, and we're happy.
Okay, well, bearing that in mind, what this Lumsden said from Goodreads, do you think that, you know, her opinion's good or bad, do you think the book has that much of a social impact on men and women?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, everything that she said in there is pretty much what the entire romance genre in its history has been hearing. That romance gives women a bad idea, happily ever after never happens, you know. No matter what genre of romance it is, I mean, even the innocent harlequin romances have been subject to that type of criticism. So there's nothing new there. Perhaps the BDSM relationships are a bit exaggerated. I don't know, I'm not into that lifestyle, but that's at least some of the criticism that I've heard. So certainly, I think we're all adults in this room. We're not gonna look at a novel of fiction, a work of fiction, as a how-to guide. Am I right about this? Like, if you want to know how to do something, are you gonna look at a novel, or are you gonna look at an encyclopedia? So I think we're all on the same page there, that it's not necessarily a master's degree in, you know, how to have sex. You know, is Anna what did she say, an invertebrate? Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, let's face it, she was awfully strong-willed when she, all right, I have to divulge a spoiler here because you all read book 1 at least. She walked out. Broke her heart to walk out because she thought that he was a sick, twisted individual. So,
Yeah.
right, but she, you know, that's not something that a weak invertebrate would do.
Right.
And she challenged him the whole way
challenged
through
him,
the book.
right.
She was not in any way.
No.
Which is why she never signed the contract.
Right.
You know, which is, and he kept making concessions for it, which is the part I like.
Right.
Because he
He said, let's
was,
see how far we can.
he wasn't so planted in his mercurialness.
I've always called this a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and quite honestly, the Beast became a little bit more beguiled by the Beauty by the end of the trilogy. Then, you know, she went over to the dark side.
You said, and it's true, that it's not a how-to book, and yet on many of the talk shows, they've been saying that it's been spicing up the lines of making the readers a
Because
they're using some of the moves.
Okay, let me ask you all a question. What do you feel as women, what is our biggest erogenous zone?
The brain, absolutely.
Did this book engage your minds,
And
your
how?
imaginations? That's why.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
You're
that's
right.
why. That's all I needed to do.
Yes.
I think that the reason it appeals so much is because it opens up that dialogue that
Yeah.
you were saying that no one will speak about. But in bringing the book home and you're reading it and your husband is looking over like, why is her face red? even my own husband thought it was very humorous that I'm sitting there, my face is completely red, and he's saying, what is so interesting
Yeah.
that the world is crumbling around our house, and my wife is like that. So I think that for even couples as, you know, like my husband and I who are married like almost a decade, it just brings out the conversation. How can we continue to make things better without getting stale? So I think that's why couples kind of like it. And I'm pushing him to read it and I'm hoping that he will. So
You have a
we'll be happy
question?
like the Mortons.
I just sort of have a general question. Like, erotica has been getting written and read for almost, you know, what, like 200 years?
Lady Jack.
Yeah.
Why
There's
is it
nothing
in
there.
this book that everyone is acting as if it's bringing up this new and sudden discussion? Why is it this book that everyone's suddenly reading? I mean, did people read erotica before this?
Absolutely.
They
I
did,
think it's the fame.
they did under the covers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I think it was just a
people who are
stigma.
reading this book and finding it so suddenly thrilling and inspiring. Have they read erotica before?
Probably not.
Oh, actually, I haven't. I haven't read a whole lot of erotica personally prior to this series. I was strictly into romance, and I still am. But this kind of lets me go there.
It's a really good question, and I still think it has a lot to do with Twilight. She was asking how the erotica genre has been around for about 200 years or so. This is the first erotic book that people have read. You know, where were they before this? Why pick this book?
Hello, Penthouse, Playboy have been around for a gazillion years. They're in every man's bathroom, married, single, or otherwise. Has anybody not read
Nobody ever
Playboy
calls it that
Forum?
anymore.
Has anybody ever read the question answer? That's, I mean, this is,
But that's,
this is,
the audience is
I think the
men.
major difference is that
No.
you're talking about.
I hate
Yeah,
to say it.
absolutely.
No.
I think to answer your question as to why it's this book, I think it's piggybacking on Twilight's success. I think she managed to capture Twilight's enormous fan base and convert them to erotic fans now.
It also has a woman who achieves a goal, rather than the man who achieves the goal.
Exactly. It's the first book anyway.
I had brought this up the other day, which you answered, but I was surprised. I read Twilight because I wanted to see, I didn't know anything about it, and Nola had told me about it. I could not believe, it was like plagiarism, half of it. I mean, the words that, except for Edward, the way he held his hand, the way he did this, it was like sometimes word for word.
Yeah.
How did she get away with that?
Well,
What
that's
happened
one of
to
the
her?
questions we're still trying to figure out as a professional.
You had answered
From a
it to a
professional
point.
perspective, I really struggle with this. I would be furious if somebody
Well, I
took
was
my
a
paragraphs
librarian,
out of
and I'm
sentence.
thinking copyright right
Oh,
away.
yeah. I'm still agog at it. I really don't understand
I mean,
how
she took
they're
the
not
vampires
listed.
away and put the sex in, but just the expressions and everything.
Well, as I said before, Christian Grey is
Is
Edward
Edward, right. And she's
Instead of
definitely
calling
not.
him, you know, bronze haired, he's copper haired.
Exactly.
But other than that, he's still.
You know, with his sister and everything, I mean, it was just,
I think that battle is raging. That's,
is it? I was surprised.
there are people, you're either on one side of the fence or the other. But, I mean, my opinion was that when they asked Stephanie Meyer about this and how, they did, yeah, that's what I
Well,
mean.
she said good luck to her.
Yeah, she said, God bless her. So I guess if the author can, you know, it probably brought in enough elements that were so different from Twilight. Like there was no paranormal, no vampires or anything like that. And then you bring in the BDSM. And I think to answer this young lady's question, it was just an idea that women just decided that this was going to be cool, you know, and this was going to kind of explode. And that's why I guess that's why mommy porn was born, because, you know, we all decided that this was exciting enough.
Can I just say something? I've read E.L. James's, one of her interviews, and for what it's worth, like, I don't think that was her, you know, I don't think that was her ulterior motive when she wrote them. She read the Twilight series. Actually, I felt like I was reading my own story because I fell in love with the Twilight Saga, and I was inspired to write after reading the Twilight Saga myself, and wrote my own novel, which doesn't have vampires or sex or anything in it. But she read it, and she devoured the series just like I did, and she was inspired to write after that.
Actually, we even both took place in Seattle. I mean, just, it was amazing.
Right, but again, I think ultimately because fan fiction is a genre in itself and it's accepted and it's whatever it is, I don't think that that was her goal, was to, oh, I'm gonna make this ton of money and market and blah, 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 even though that is her background. I think she was just inspired to write from, you know, from enjoying the Twilight series.
Yes.
I don't see Christian Edward alike at all. I
No, me
can't
neither,
I
really.
can't see
Me neither,
in the
really.
demeanor how they're
Right,
alike. For
when you
one,
get to know.
Edward is very modest and would never walk around with no shirt, let alone wear jeans, let alone like eat hamburgers or eat with his hands, some of the things that Christian
Well,
does
his diet was a
in the
little
book.
limited.
Right. But even if he could eat, he was such a refined person. And he would have never, I mean, how many times did he get a medical degree, among other things? And here you have Christian, who's a Harvard dropout. He's dejected from his family or feels that way. And, you know, curses and things, mannerisms that Edward would never do. I can't see that to
Edward
be
was
like
supposedly
that.
in high school too, but just the way he would say he would come or he clapped his head this way, just expressions, not necessarily Edward. There was an awful lot of
And
similarity.
also,
Yeah, there
Anastasia's
was- there were
not
a lot of-
awkward at all.
No.
Bella's very awkward. She stumbles, she falls.
Well, so
over
that's
the
okay.
shit.
No,
She stumbles.
They stumble in his
Yeah, but she's also wearing Manolo Blahniks and Christian Louboutins like throughout half the book.
Yeah, but
So,
not that first time.
maybe.
No,
I read both and I didn't see any
The
correlation.
roommate loaned them to
This
her.
young
She
lady
was
got-
just a plain
If
Jane.
Christian wasn't as enormously wealthy as he was, do you think that the erotica and the sexual part of the book would have flown?
Excellent
I
question.
think for the reader, yes.
What was the question?
Yeah, because his,
Can you repeat the question? The question asked on the left side of, my left, was whether or not all of Christian's millions had any impact on
Was the
Anna's.
turn on?
Was it part of the turn on, right? Like, in other words, if he was a poor slob, would he be this successful, right? Now, this is an interesting discussion because most of the books on the rack here, okay, Bear It To You is another megalomaniac, I can't say that word, megalomaniac, CEO of another corporation. Let's see, Gabriel's Rapture, Gabriel's Inferno, he's another one with millions. It seems to be part of the genre. It's part of the fantasy. So that's a really good question. I would have to do some research to find out if there's any erotica where everybody's poor.
Right.
Edward has money, yes.
The ladies had a lover. He was,
yeah, he was a gardener.
Yeah, the chick, the lady chick.
Yeah, especially in the original form. I think, to me, I don't think his millions, it adds an element, but I think there were other elements in the story. I think to the character, it adds something, but for me, I don't know. I don't know if his millions would make a difference because of the way he was. Yeah.
But it also makes it possible. You can't, I mean, the
Well, yeah,
money
right.
made some of the
It adds to the
totally
story.
possible.
I was gonna tell you something for a second, but
You know, it's like there's no negotiable.
certain things they do would require money, so, yeah, that.
The money was
I can see how that would.
It adds to the power.
But to me, it would be as. Okay, ladies, I guess we'll just continue this way because we seem to be, you know, simpatico. I will pose this to everybody and just, you know, point, whoever raises their hand, I'll point and shoot. 50 Shades has been accused of objectifying women through the use of BDSM, playing on the stigma that bondage lifestyle seems to have. Do you agree with this assessment? Anybody want to answer that?
Wait, could you repeat the question?
50 Shades has been accused of objectifying women. With the BDS, a lot, I mean, how many people here are subs or doms in this room?
How many people would admit it if they were?
This lady just said they wouldn't admit it if they were, so that's
signed an NDA over here.
I'm not admitting it, but the way the psychologists are saying that most women are dominant. Because, or subs rather, they're subs to their husband and they're subs to everything. And said, if you think about it, the men have always, about 3 years old, she said the men take, the boys take over, they do the stuff, and the women have always been. And
I think that's changing.
Yeah, I think that's changing a lot. Not anymore.
Becoming more aggressive.
Well, but, I mean, just in the comments around, you can see the stigma that BDSM has. It's something kind of dirty, It was probably what sex was 25, 30 years ago. It was something dirty, you couldn't talk about it. So, based on that stigma that the bondage lifestyle has, do you agree that this sort of book objectifies women? This gal.
I've done a lot of artwork from a feminist perspective.
No.
Right. Selling art, if you want to spread out across the top, sell any product.
This gal is saying that everything objectifies women, advertising and.
Yeah. So why are we not desensitized to it to the point where we can say just because.
False insecurity.
I think that it objectified him as well. I mean, if you're gonna talk about it in terms of how they portrayed her, women, I mean, he took his shirt off, and the way that she described him, guys could say, well, that was objectifying men as well.
That's a good point.
Right.
I guess it depends on what side of the fence you're on.
And he was at one point a submissive
That's right. I think it was written from and for the female gaze as opposed to most porn and
I agree.
most
Definitely.
even advertising most of
Well, it was from her perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
So even though I have.
Okay, everybody needs to do their theater and project from the diaphragm when they speak. You had a question?
I still feel that that's only one part of the book. The rest of the book, where he put her on a pedestal, he adored her, he thought that she was brilliant, he thought that she was beautiful. He gave her the most gorgeous clothes, he took her to the most fabulous places. So it was, and he cared about her, he truly loved her, and she truly loved him. So I think that a whole section of it, everybody seems to be missing.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
She didn't feel that way. She didn't see that he loved her.
I'm fine.
In the first book.
In the first book.
She doesn't really know that he loved her.
Because he had issues that precluded him, other than in the Red Room, from showing her how much he adored her. He was constantly, all he cared about was her pleasure, even in the Red Room. He was so clear about that safe word. And the reason when they broke up was because she didn't trust him enough to use that safe word, and he went too far. And that destroyed him. That showed her, that showed the devotion.
I'm not sure I disagree with any of that, but I question is putting her in the clothes in the car and satisfying her, still feeding his own ego and keeping her something.
He wanted her to be
If he didn't satisfy her, that's when they can fight.
Take it off.
That's
his idea.
I think if I was Anna, I would say it doesn't matter. Let's bring it on. Okay, here's a question that I don't know if anyone will be able to answer, but we'll see. What do you think the most important lesson men can take from this? Aside from what Patty told her husband when after she read it, she shoved it into his chest and said, "Make this happen." And she's been very happy ever since. I'm pretty sure he did. So what?
TMI.
I guess you could answer the question
it might change, the answer might change.
Through, yeah, if you wanna look at it through the whole series or just the first, second, and third.
I've only read 1 and 2, but I think I
Okay.
read differently about
Can't hear it.
the ending of each.
So what would you think, a man could learn, what do you think a man could learn from the first book, being as most people have read the first book?
It's hard to me to.
Should we ask our token gentleman?
They didn't read it, but they
Sir?
didn't read it, they didn't read it.
Oh, okay.
No, he didn't like it.
He didn't read it either.
Oh, I thought you said you read it, okay. All right.
They're here for different reasons.
My husband got
Yeah.
totally intake from it, and I thought that there would be a lot more psychology involved in this discussion, because ever since Oprah, they talk about, people being abused as children, and how very often they grow up to be abusers themselves. And that Sadinsky case and everything that's in the news now. I wonder about those Sandusky, those young men who were abused, will they abuse others, in turn?
That's a different book.
I think that's what my husband got out of it. He said, only the first book, haven't read the others, but that because Christian was abused, he thought it was just natural that he would be.
To carry on the abuse.
He was abused definitely before he
That's
was
true.
adopted, and I
That's
believe
true.
Yes.
Did anybody else read book 2? Can they answer that question for book 2? Oh, okay, I thought you were.
Mary?
Mary?
From book 2, you said?
Yeah, what can men learn from book 2?
Honestly, what I
Without
think
giving it away.
Without giving anything away, and book 2 was my favorite of the 3.
Yeah.
I would say that my husband, if he were to read it, which I'm working on that, he would say that Christian listens to her, and when he constantly asks, as one of these other ladies pointed out, what makes you happy? And how often do husbands really give a damn? No offense to you, sir. But my
Hey, there's another husband back there.
and you
That's
also.
no offense, honey. I love you.
But husbands don't seem to care. And Christian, although he's a little strange on how he goes about the caring, and how he wants to, pounce in a way, and he does it in a controlling way, but he cares enough to keep asking, and he'll do something about it.